You know that feeling, the one you get when something looks human but it isn't quite right. A wax figure at a museum, a humanoid robot, a face generated by AI, all things that make your brain scream to look away and run. Science people call this the Uncanny Valley, and it is an incredibly popular phenomenon on the internet and has been for quite a while.
What is this thing? Throw this away.
I can't, man. It's not mine. I'm just holding onto it for my uncle until he gets out of the hospital.
Hello, Adam.
Ew.
It's even a partial underpinning of modern horror. That is, the Uncanny Valley. Something just isn't right. The closer something gets to looking human without being human, the more it makes the human uncomfortable. It makes your skin crawl. The Uncanny Valley is one of the most studied phenomena in psychology, and nobody can really agree on why it exists. Now, because these are science people, there's tons of theories as to why it exists. Maybe millions of years ago, there was a predator that mimicked humans. It looked like us, it moved like us, but it wasn't us, and it wanted to kill us. And maybe our ancestors got so good at spotting these things that the predators eventually went extinct, but the fear stayed hardwired into our genetic memory. And another far worse theory is that there wasn't just one predator. There were dozens, hundreds even, for millions of years. The idea that our ancestors shared the earth with creatures that walked upright, had hands, used tools, and looked almost human, with some of them wanting to eat us, some of them wanting to mate with us, some of them wanting our food, some wanting our territory, and some of them we still don't know what they wanted. In modern times, seeing a not a human is a result of an ARG or some kind of horror trope or a video game, or, looking at the generative creation of an AI. But for most of history, seeing a not a human could have meant death. And this is the very real story of some of those encounters throughout human history. The things that looked like us, the things that hunted us, and the things we became when we were the only ones left. Let's go back 2 million years. Your name is Bob, and you're living in Africa. You're standing on the shore of an ancient lake in what is now Kenya. The sun is setting. You've spent the day foraging, maybe scavenging meat from a carcass if you were lucky. You're tired and you're heading back to wherever your group sleeps. And then you see them. Figures in the distance, walking upright, moving the way that your own people move. You freeze. Are they your group? Did someone get separated? No. Something is wrong. The proportions are off. The way they walk is similar, but it's not the same. Their heads are shaped differently, and they haven't seen you yet, fortunately. What do you do, Bob? Tell us what you do. This is it's not actually an interactive video, I'm sorry. Let's continue with the story. So Bob is left with a choice. Personally, I would perform 2 movements, a bowel movement and a physical movement. I would shit and I would run. In 2024, researchers found footprints in Kenya from 1.5 million years ago. 2 different species of human walked the same shore within hours or even days of each other. That is Homo erectus and Paranthropus boisei. Homo erectus and Paranthropus boisei are 2 different kinds of human that use the same water source. At Dremelin Cave in South Africa, scientists found something even stranger. Skulls from 3 different species, all in the same place. Australopithecus, Paranthropus, and the earliest known Homo erectus. 3 different humans lived in the same area at the same time. This was normal for millions of years. This was just how the world worked. There were bipedal people monkey things all walking around and coexisting. There were multiple species of human-like creatures all competing for the same resources, all looking at each other across the African savanna. It's scary shit. I don't exactly know why, but the thought of there being not people is horrifying. Imagine you just go out and there's just different species of human. Imagine going to Walmart and there's just short people everywhere. It kind of does happen now, though, to be honest. So multiple species all sharing the African savanna, looking at each other. That's not all, folks. They did more than look. At Atapuerca in Spain, archaeologists found human bones from 800,000 years ago, and 30% of them had cut marks made by stone tools, marks made by other humans. These humans ate each other, not as a ritual, not as a survival during a famine. The evidence suggests it was routine. Humans were other humans' food sources. These folks were in direct competition in the chain of nature. And this is the world that our ancestors came from, and then now we're here.
I love cooking.
But the planning, the shopping, the trying to turn a fridge full of ingredients into real meals is usually where my entire life falls apart and I start shaking and crying on the floor because I'm a guy who likes to crash out with no airbags. But for cooking, it's why I've been using Hungry Root. Having Hungry Root is like having a personal shopper and nutritionist rolled into one little guy who can't talk back. I tell them what I'm trying to eat, what I like, what I don't like, and they build me a incredible weekly grocery order with recipes included. I can focus on higher protein meals or gut-friendly options, quick breakfasts. Look at this incredible meal. This is all ingredients sourced from Hungry Root. Take advantage of this exclusive offer on the Oompaville channel. For a limited time, get 40% off your first box plus a free item in every box for life. Just click the link below or go to hungryroot.com and use code OOMPA. That is 40% off your first box and free items for life at hungryroot.com with code OOMPA. Link in the description. All the information's down there. Thank you to Hungry Root for sponsoring this video.
Now imagine a human, but a human that was built for grinding up plants, the cow of the human lineage, with massive jaw muscles anchored to a ridge of bone running across the top of the skull like a gorilla, huge flat teeth designed for chewing tough vegetation, and a face that's somehow both familiar and incredibly handsome, and also wrong. We're talking about the Paranthropus boisei. Paranthropus walked upright, they had hands like ours, they probably even used simple tools, and for over 1 million years, they lived alongside our ancestors. Different species of Paranthropus survived in Africa from about 2.7 million years ago until roughly 1 million years ago. That's longer than our species has existed. So they were fairly successful. They found their niche. They ate tough plant that other species couldn't digest. And look at it, little handsome guys. When Homo erectus looked at the Paranthropus, what did they see? A relative, a competitor, something to avoid, something to hunt, something to tame, domesticate, and pet? What did they ask when they saw this creature? Can it eat me? Is it dangerous? Can I fuck it? Can it fuck me? A fun fact from science, obviously, is that Paranthropus boisei is likely the reason you can get genital herpes. Researchers at Cambridge used data modeling to trace how HSV2, the genital herpes virus, jumped from ancestral chimpanzees to humans. The culprit was our friend, the Paranthropus boisei. It's believed the Paranthropus caught it from the chimps by scavenging, eating on the corpses between 3 and 1.4 million years ago, not by having a with the chimps. Then, when Homo erectus encountered them at watering holes like Lake Turkana, the virus jumped again through close contact, consumption, or potentially both. So, thank you, Paranthropus, I guess. You are very scary looking and ugly, and you also gave us herpes. So that's an L if you ask me. Either way, we don't know exactly what they thought of each other or how they genuinely interacted, but we know they saw each other. The footprints prove it. So that's creepy and weird. Now imagine a gigantic baboon.
Your mom.
Not Gigantopithecus giant, that beast from Ark Survival Evolved, but quite large, quite larger than the baboons we have now. Then imagine being in direct competition with them. A yellow tear just went down my leg. In Kenya's Rift Valley around 1 million years ago, early humans figured out something brilliant. They learned to weaponize geography. The landscape at the time had narrow passages between cliffs, predictable routes to water sources, and natural choke points. And giant geladas, or Therapithecus aswaldi, these creatures, old school baboons, used these same paths along with elephants and hippos. Early humans studied the patterns, they learned where the animals could walk, and then they waited. This was tactical ambush hunting, not a lucky encounter, but strategic, premeditated mass killing and hunting, I guess you could call it. Archaeologists found butchered remains of these giant geladas alongside hundreds of stone tools. And the evidence shows early humans returned to the same sites repeatedly because the animals would return too. The giant geladas obviously fought back as they had canine teeth and strength in numbers, but stone tools, strategy, and patience all won out, and the butchered bones and remnants prove that. Have you ever seen that video of those baboons attacking a cheetah? Is it a cheetah? I forget. It's some kind of big cat, but a cheetah is a lesser cat. So it's not a, I don't think it's, I think it may be a lioness. I don't remember. I can't remember it clearly in my head, but it's like they come up and then the big one, it's awesome, dude. Then there's the Gigantopithecus, or as I like to call him, Bigfoot. I'm an idiot. The largest ape that ever lived, and estimates put this big son of a bitch between 440 to 1100, maybe 1200 pounds even. Height estimates vary widely because we've never found a complete skeleton, only teeth and jawbones, but those jawbones are gigantic. Gigantopithecus gigantic. Gigantopithecus lived in China from about 2 million years ago until somewhere between 200 and 300,000 years ago. And that's the same time and place as the Homo erectus, our great-grandpappy. And stone tools have even been found near Gigantopithecus caves. The idea of a Chinese Bigfoot and a Chinese man coexisting, to me, is fascinating. Did they meet? We don't know for certain, but the overlap, it seems precise, okay? There seems like there's enough evidence there. I'm just gonna say it. But what happened to these giant Chinese beasts? The death blow for Gigantopithecus came during the Pleistocene as a dramatic shift in climate called the Mid-Pleistocene transition hit Asia. The region saw cycles of cooler, drier glacial periods that transformed lush subtropical forests into patchier woodlands and grasslands. With their main food being forest fruits and soft plants rapidly disappearing, these big son of a bitches could not adapt fast enough. Some science people argue that Gigantopithecus was finished off by a changing environment, but others say that competition with Homo erectus for resources or even direct encounters may have played a role in pushing them to extinction. The largest ape in history gone, and my Chinese grandpappy may have been involved. There's also a fun theory that the origins of the Bigfoot legend, aka the idea of a giant, hairy, human-like creature lurking in the forests of the Pacific Northwest and elsewhere around the world, this may be rooted in very real prehistoric encounters with humanoids like the Gigantopithecus. Some anthropologists and cryptozoologists have speculated that the stories of Bigfoot in North America and the Yeti or Yeren in Asia are genetic memories of ancient human interactions with Gigantopithecus, the enormous ape that once roamed Asia. And by some anthropologists and cryptozoologists, I mean myself. I kind of made some of that up a little bit. So that is cool, is it not? It's a fun idea. You know, maybe it's our, oh, what's that big, huge, hairy guy over there? Oh, that's a dude we weren't really in that much competition with, and were in Asia a long time ago, Chinese grandpappy. I don't really know. I thought it'd be funny to say in this video though. And I can definitely say that it would be very scary to run into one of these big son of a bitches. And regardless of what I make up, our ancestors were definitely in competition with a lot of not humans. Our ancestors weren't the only folks out there that were big and hairy. We were in fierce competition with some horrible beasts, but luckily, our brains and tools were impossible to compete with. Speaking of tools, take it away, North02, actually anthropologically accurate YouTube channel that makes excellent content that you should all go watch.
Humans are pretty harmless without tools. We have no fangs, no claws, and we really aren't that strong. But our ability to create and use tools is what really set our ancestors apart. Even as far back as Homo erectus 2 million years ago, our weapons were absolutely brutal. Homo erectus was the first hominin to evolve longer limbs. The same length as ours, in fact. This allowed them to not only run down their prey, but to throw projectiles. Suddenly, a simple rock could kill a prey animal at well over 100 feet away. And archaeologists have found caches of hundreds of these rocks, which were basically ammo dumps. When the hyenas came around to harass you, you and your boys could just throw rocks until they retreated. But our ability to throw also turned simple wooden spears into devastating weapons. Even just a sharp stick is able to penetrate straight into the heart or lungs of a prey animal, leading to a quick death. Now compare this to a lion or a leopard. They are not able to go for the vital organs. They must first grapple with their prey and then go for their neck. They then clamp down on the windpipe and arteries until their prey eventually dies. This process can take upwards of 10 minutes. But now compare that to a throw or a thrust from a spear. It can penetrate directly into the vitals, often killing an animal in less than a minute. This ability set us apart from any other predator, and we also had sharp stone tools. At this point, they were mainly used as knives to butcher animals and to process plants, but they allowed us to quickly strip an animal of its meat and get it home safely. Compare this to the lion, which must slowly rip off chunks of meat and lick up the rest with its tongue. Other weapons such as clubs could break bones or even kill an enemy in a single blow. While a lone encounter with Dinopithecus would have been absolute nightmare fuel, humans were rarely ever alone. Acting together armed with stones, spears, and heavy clubs, we were an unstoppable force. Even Dinopithecus was no match for our abilities. But our tools and physical abilities wouldn't fully develop until around 1.7 million years ago. And even then, plenty of men, women, and children met their end to tooth and claw.
For most of human evolution, we were not the predators we are now with various gadgets and gizmos. We were prey. We were getting bodied left, right, and center. Dinophilis was a false saber-toothed cat, not as famous as the Smilodon with its massive fangs, but in some ways it was more terrifying. In fact, you're about to hear why. Dinophilis was an ambush predator that didn't just chase you down. It waited in the underbrush and shadows, and then it pounced. Bad kitty meow. Paranthropus skulls have been found with holes in them precisely spaced and matching the canine teeth of Dinophilis. Professor C.K. Brain, who studied sites like these for decades, proposed a theory. Dinophilis specialized in killing primates, hominids, and baboons. It would kill them and drag their bodies back to its cave lair. For millions of years, something waited in the darkness specifically to hunt things that looked like us, that walked on 2 feet and scrolled Instagram reels, I'm guessing. And get this, Dinophilis was not alone. A 2025 study analyzed bite marks on bones from the Olduvai Gorge in Tanzania. The bones belonging to Homo habilis, one of our direct ancestors, had marks that weren't made by hyenas, as scientists had originally assumed. They were made by leopards. Leopards hunt live prey, hyenas scavenge. So Homo habilis wasn't scavenging and getting caught. Homo habilis was being hunted. Homo habilis, by the way, whose name literally means handyman, was basically the original do-it-yourselfer, a small, kindergarten-sized, scrappy bastard, famous for inventing stone tools, but not unfortunately for inventing not getting eaten. So 2 million years ago, our little bastard ancestors spent most of their time hiding, running, and trying not to become something else's meal, something like Dinophilis. Back at Olduvai Gorge, there was something even worse in the water. Crocodylus anthropophagus. If you understand the name, it tells you basically everything that you need to know. Anthropophagus means human eater. And as a human, that's a pretty scary name. This was a 25-foot crocodile with bony horns on its head. It lived almost 2 million years ago in the same waters where Homo habilis tried to survive. And we know it ate humans because we found the bite marks on hominin bones matching its teeth exactly, given its name. Our Homo habilis ancestors as adults stood about 3 feet tall and weighed around 85 to 90 pounds. So like I said earlier, it's essentially a bunch of tiny kindergartners. Easy prey for a 25-foot crocodile. I guess that's bigger than a kindergartner. How much does a kindergartner weigh? 50 pounds? I was very square when I was in kindergarten, so I'm not an accurate measurement. I think it was like 125. I was also like 9, so. Just kidding, I was homeschooled. This next beast that ancient humanity faced is really scary to me. I'm gonna be real with you guys. I don't like birds very much. They freak me out. I often have bad dreams about birds. I don't know why. Giant ones like this, the Leptoptilos robustus. On the island of Flores in Indonesia, researchers found fossils so strange that some scientists initially thought these were diseased modern humans. Skull the size of a chimpanzee's, a body standing at a disgusting 3 foot 7 inches tall. But the thing was, the bones were too old, they were too consistent and too numerous to be anomalies. These were Homo floresiensis, aka the hobbits. They stood about 3 foot 7 inches tall. These little son of a bitches made stone tools, they hunted dwarf elephants, and they controlled fire, all with a brain roughly the size of a grapefruit. They survived until at least 50,000 years ago, possibly even later. And their island was a nightmare. Komodo dragons, the largest lizard on Earth, and they also shared their island with Leptoptilos robustus, a carnivorous stork that stood 6 feet tall. There are few things scarier to me than birds, and with this thing existing alongside my little tiny grandpappies, it is an interesting and terrifying thought. It was so big, it was twice as tall as Homo habilis, twice as tall as Homo floresiensis, and taller than Paranthropus. I like looking at the hobbits, the little guys, the drawings of them. They're so adorable, dude. They look nothing like how Tolkien imagined them. He was way off. Science people debate whether or not the stork actively hunted hobbits. At a minimum, they competed fiercely for carcasses, and you can probably imagine fighting a 6 foot meat-eating bird for scraps of an elephant while Komodo dragons circle. Maybe you can imagine that. Maybe you can't. I often dream of that, okay, guys? Either way, Flores was not a very safe or fun sounding place. Yeah, seems like a shithole. Over time, some things changed. Homo erectus emerged with larger bodies, larger brains, larger penises. Evidence suggests they may have controlled fire, they could run long distances, and they made better tools than the other humanoids around that time. That's probably not the right word to use. That's some science fiction shit. I apologize, I'm an idiot, not an anthropologist. The tables turned for humanity slowly at first, but within a few 100,000 years, very short period of time, all things considered, things that once hunted us started to disappear. Dinofelis went extinct, and so did that giant, scary crocodile, and we spread across the world. But the imprint of these monsters and the fear that they caused stayed with us. Cannot erase thousands of years of evolutionary survival instinct. Fast forward even further. Homo sapiens emerges in Africa around 300,000 years ago. Modern humans, that is us. Even then, we were not alone. Other human species still walk the earth in Europe, Asia, and isolated corners of Africa. Species we would meet, species we would fight, species we would... Some we conquered through violence, some we conquered through... I mean, that's what happened. And some of these we can't find. No bones, no fossils, only their DNA remains hiding in our own cells. Ghost species. In 2020, researchers at UCLA published a study that changed basically a couple things about what we thought we knew about our human ancestry. I was gonna say changed everything, but that's just not true. It's definitely odd though. They analyzed the DNA of West African populations, Yoruba people from Nigeria and Mende people from Sierra Leone, and they found something that shouldn't really have been there. Somewhere between 2 and 19% of their DNA came from an unknown species, a ghost population that diverged from our ancestors over 1 million years ago. And the interbreeding happened around 50,000 years ago, roughly the same time Neanderthals were breeding with humans in Europe, aka my grandpappies was out there them big hairy son bitches. I have so much Neanderthal DNA. I'm gonna show you guys real quick. Yes, I gave my DNA to 23andMe in like 2015 or whatever. I regretted it, of course, and I know you can tell them to stop, but I kind of like it. I don't care if they clone me or whatever they're gonna do. I know it's evil, dude. It sucks. Don't do this. But look, I'm an Italian person. I'm 31% Italian. I'm glad it's focusing on it. 18% Western European, and only 7% Levantine. I was more than that. My shit keeps updating and I become less and less cool. Another new one is Welsh. Apparently I'm Welsh. That's where all the Neanderthal comes from. So I'm not sure what species all those are. I'm just kidding. All right? Just trying to make, small talk. If you made it this far in the video, obviously you like what you're watching, so hit the like button, I guess. And if you want to see more videos like this, I would love to make more stuff like this. This type of stuff is really cool, and I love this. And I appreciate you guys for enjoying it, okay? Because it's really cool. The thing about the Neanderthals interbreeding with humans in Europe is we have Neanderthal fossils. We have hundreds of them. We have tools, art, burial sites, incredible art, by the way. Unbelievably beautiful, just magical stuff that's a rabbit hole in and of itself. Neanderthal art is incredible. For this ghost species, we have nothing. No fossils, no bones, no tools, nothing but genetic traces that were left behind. Could it have been late surviving Homo erectus, Homo heidelbergensis? Something we never found? We don't know. Fossil preservation in West Africa is poor because the climate destroys bones and the soil is quite acidic. What we do know is that some of their genes spread rapidly through our ancestors. Genes for tumor suppression, genes for hormone regulation, whatever the species was, they did give us some useful things. So there was a species successful enough to survive for 1 million years, hiding in West Africa with no physical trace left behind, only their blood in our veins. Outside of me just saying the climate in West Africa doesn't exactly lead to the great preservation of fossils and bones, how about a real guy telling you more about that?
There are almost certainly dozens of other branches of the human family tree that we haven't found any physical evidence of. The ghost hominid present in West Africa was only discovered in the year 2020. Keep in mind, the genetics of this hominid are specific to West Africa. Other Africans don't have any trace of it. Geneticists will continue to find strange remnants of extinct lineages around the world. It is possible that we even have traces from the tiny hobbit of Flores, or even late surviving populations of Homo erectus spread across the world. It really gives you a glimpse into just how many human species there were. When our species emerged 300,000 years ago, there were at least 7 other species of human, and almost certainly many more that we don't have evidence for. The ghost hominids of West Africa prove that entire species can remain isolated in a relatively small area for hundreds of thousands of years. In the next couple of years, be on the lookout because new species of human will almost certainly be discovered. And that brings us to one of the most important archaeological sites ever discovered.
Thank you, North, if that is your real name. Los Huesos, Spanish for the Pit of Bones, or just Pit of Bones. It's a cave in the Atapuerca Mountains of northern Spain. 430,000 years ago, someone or something dumped bodies into a 50-foot shaft. At least 28 individuals, Proto-Neanderthals or possibly Homo heidelbergensis. Science people still debate the proper classification. One of those skulls is labeled cranium 17. It has 2 holes above the left eye socket, perfectly positioned, made by the same weapon from different angles. 2 separate blows to the face. And there was no healing. The victim died from those wounds. This is the oldest known and recorded murder. The blows were not accidental. Accidents happened to the side of the head. This was a deliberate face-to-face attack. And the fact that there were 2 blows suggests a clear intention to kill, according to science people. And what makes this even stranger is that the body wasn't left where it fell. Someone carried it to the pit and placed it with the other body. And also in the area, a redstone tool was found, possibly a grave offering or something along those lines. So 430,000 years ago, these proto-humans killed each other and then they buried their dead in a shaft. Murder, mourning, violence, ritual, all the same species, all in the same place. We had a war with these motherfuckers. A war with the Neanderthals. 600,000 years ago, humanity split in 2. One branch stayed in Africa. They would become us, the Homo sapiens. The other branch walked north into Europe and Asia. They would become the Neanderthals, or as I knew them as a kid, Neanderthal. For hundreds of thousands of years, the 2 lineages evolved separately in different climates, facing different challenges and developing different bodies. Then we met again. And the first contact happened earlier than we thought for quite a while. In 2025, researchers published a study of a 140,000-year-old child skull from the School Cave in Israel. The skull looked like Homo sapiens, but the inner ear structure was Neanderthal. So were parts of the jaw and teeth. That's a hybrid, 140,000 years ago, 100,000 years earlier than the previous estimates of our intermingling. The science people concluded that when humans and Neanderthals met, they didn't only fight, they coexisted for a while. They shared knowledge, tools, hunting methods, and they even had children together. They also, obviously, they beat the out of each other. There was warfare. We fought them a lot. The Saint-Césaire Neanderthal skull found in France was split by a blow. Someone hit this individual hard enough to crack their skull 36,000 years ago, which really is not that long ago. At Shanadar Cave in Iraq, a Neanderthal was found with a spear wound to the chest. The weapon that killed him was human. Perifractures, broken forearms from warding off blows appear frequently in both Neanderthal and early human remains. This war we had with Neanderthals was not quick. Humans broke out of Africa around 200,000 years ago, and it took 150,000 years to fully conquer Neanderthal territory. They pushed back, they retook ground over time. It was a war of attrition, not a blitzkrieg. The really strange part about all this is that they were so much like us. It's freaky. They're not humans, but they're also like us. We still have their DNA inside of us. I've got a lot of it, according to 23andMe and my corporate overlords. In 2018, researchers dated cave art in Spain to 64,000 years ago, at least 20,000 years before generative AI and before modern humans arrived in Europe. The first one was a lie. Red hand stencils, geometric shapes, painted stalagmites. By the way, stalagmites are the ones that come from the ground and they go up. And stalactites are the ones that come down. You know how I remember that? Because mites are crawling around on the ground. Stalagmite. So yeah, pretty much, pretty cool. Neanderthals made art and shell jewelry and necklaces from evil talons. They decorated themselves with feathers. Shanadar 1 was a Neanderthal found in Iraq. He had a crushed skull that had healed. A withered arm possibly was amputated, and all this found with evidence of partial blindness and deafness. These were multiple injuries that would have left him unable to survive alone, and he lived to an old age, so someone cared for this old bastard for years. 2% of non-African human DNA is Neanderthal. They didn't die outright, they were absorbed. They were bred out of existence, their genes diluted over generations until genetically they ceased to exist as a separate population, which as an idea is incredibly epic. I think that's a really cool way to think about time, because when you think about all these different species and genus and all these different creatures that have lived for the past millions upon millions upon millions of years, it's just like, where'd they all go? They just got killed by something? No, they just kind of stopped existing a little bit. We don't really know exactly. We don't always find their bones because sometimes conditions don't lead to bones being preserved in fossils. Thank you, North02, for explaining that to us. And that's what happened to the Neanderthals. They were our enemies and they were our lovers. And now they're gone. Requies a tu pace, Sir Neanderthal. I mentioned that little Israeli hybrid child. How about this hybrid child that was found in 2012 inside Denisova Cave in Siberia? Researchers found a single fragment of bone, so small it was almost discarded. Another unidentifiable piece of ancient debris. But luckily, with DNA analysis, that has changed everything, because DNA is everywhere. As long as it was living at some point and there's some DNA on it, we have more info now. Turns out that the bone belonged to a 13-year-old girl who lived around 90,000 years ago, and her mother was a Neanderthal, and her father was a Denisovan. She was a first-gen hybrid. And not like a Prius, all right? Her parents were from two completely different human species. Her father, when they analyzed his genome more closely, they found Neanderthal ancestry hundreds of generations back. But he was a long-term Neanderthal. Scientists named this little girl Denny. Finding a first-generation hybrid is statistically quite improbable unless interbreeding was common or unless when these species met, they mated regularly. A fellow by the name of Svante Pabo put it fairly simply. The Neanderthals and Denisovans may not have had many opportunities to meet, but when they did, they must have mated frequently, much more so than we previously thought. They were horny as dude. I'm telling you, that's what's up with the Neanderthals, man. Us Euros love mating. We love to mate. For a while, the Denisovans were the ultimate ghost species. There was one finger bone, a few teeth, a fragment of a skull, all from a single cave in Siberia. That's all we had. But their DNA was everywhere. 5% of Melanesian and Aboriginal Australian DNA comes from Denisovans, and there are significant traces that appear in Southeast Asian populations. And something even stranger is that there were multiple Denisovan populations. Some were as genetically different from each other as they were from Neanderthals. There are several different species of Denisovan all interbreeding with humans at different times and places. In Papua New Guinea, the evidence suggests interbreeding happened as recently as 15 to 30,000 years ago, long after we thought all archaic humans had died out. But they survived in remote mountains and on isolated islands longer than anyone expected. Now fast forward, 1933, Harbin, China. A Chinese laborer is forced to help Japanese soldiers build a bridge, and while digging, he finds something, a massive human skull. He hides the skull in a well, keeping it secret from his occupiers for decades. In 2018, the man's family finally donates the skull to science. The skull is enormous, with a brain capacity of 1,420 cubic centimeters, larger than most modern humans, with massive brow ridges, a wide face, and a huge nose probably adapted to cold climates with no chin. Guys like Andrew Tate, all right? Science people initially called this finding the Dragon Man. They proposed a new species named Homo longi. But in 2025, DNA analysis confirmed what many other smart people had suspected. The genetic material extracted from the dental plaque of this skull matched the known Denisovan genomes. So after over a decade of searching, we finally know what the Denisovans looked like. They looked almost human. They were massive and strange. Our relatives, our ancestors, our lovers, gone now, except for what they left behind, like their big old heads. In 2013, recreational cavers exploring Rising Star Cave in South Africa found a narrow shaft, only 8 inches wide, which really isn't that big if you think about it. The bottom, 30 meters underground, they found bones, lots and lots of bones, 1,550 fragments, at least 15 individuals, 15, 15, 1, 5, 1, 5, the largest collection of a single hominin species ever found in Africa. They called the species Homo naledi. I'm probably not saying that right, but that's one that I didn't hear anybody actually say. So the other ones I looked anyways. Here's what didn't make sense. The anatomy of these findings looked primitive. Brain size between 465 and 610 cubic centimeters, with modern humans averaging between 1,270 and 1,330. The shoulders of these creatures were sloped forward like an ape's. The fingers were curved or adapted for climbing. This looked like a species from 2 million years ago, and scientists expected the dating to confirm this. But the dating came back, confirming 236 to 335,000 years ago. Now, it's very important to note that a lot of dating methods, not this one in particular, are very inaccurate. And there's, anytime you read any one of these sources or find anything, it's like, well, we don't have any idea. So, you know, it really doesn't matter anyways. People will continue to find and you know, update people. So maybe I'll make an update video when they change all this information. Who knows? The point is, that's pretty recent. It's wrong. It's not possible. A species this primitive should have been extinct for 1 million years, but instead they survived alongside early Homo sapiens. Did they meet? We have no idea, but there is an undeniable overlap according to this information. And what's incredibly bizarre is that the bodies were not dumped accidentally. They were stuffed into this cave. The cave is too difficult to access. There's no predator, no flood deposit. There's no evidence of anything but the bodies being placed there by somebody. Now, maybe we killed them in mass and buried them in a tiny hole, or maybe the Homo naledi buried their own dead. There were also cave engravings found nearby, geometric shapes carved into rock, and all of this with a brain the size of a gorilla's. That's ritual behavior in a hominin species. It's kind of weird. What exactly were they?
Homo naledi is a perfect example of what we discussed earlier. The survival of many strange lineages way longer than paleoanthropologists ever expected. An entire species known only from a single cave. If this cave had never been found or was destroyed by geological forces, we would have absolutely no evidence that this species ever lived. There were undoubtedly hundreds of thousands or even millions of Homo naledi that lived long and nuanced lives. But 300,000 years later, all we know about them comes from one cave. It's a humbling reminder that the sands of time consume all. Our existence is a tiny fleeting moment compared to the billions of other humans that have lived. It makes you think about how many other strange human species once roamed our planet. And were some of them as creative or compassionate as our own? We will never have precise answers to these questions. But one thing we know for sure is that they lived incredible lives. And one of the strangest species also happened to live in a land ruled by monsters.
In 2007, inside Callao Cave in the northern Philippines, the first bone was found by accident while sorting through animal remains. It looked human, but not quite. And over the years, searching in this area, researchers discovered 13 fossils: teeth, finger bones, and toe bone. And the fingers and toes are curved like Australopithecines, species that should have been extinct for 2 million years. But the dating puts these fossils at 50 to 67,000 years ago. A 2023 study pushed the estimate even further back to 134,000 years. Science people named these creatures Homo luzonensis. Locally, they're called Ubog, after a mythical caveman, which is great. So yet another example of fossils showing a mix of primitive and modern features that theoretically, based on our understanding of all this stuff, shouldn't have existed together. How many more of these things are out there just waiting to spin what we understand on its head? Dude, I hope a lot, because I love this shit. Now, what about Homo erectus? Homo erectus was the most successful human species ever. They existed for nearly 2 million years. They spread across Africa, across Asia. They may have been the first to control fire. They certainly were the first to hunt big game systematically. And every human alive today descended from populations that split off from Homo erectus or its close relatives. For a long time, scientists thought Homo erectus went extinct around 500,000 years ago on the mainland, but a 96 study suggested some may have survived on Java until 53 to 27,000 years ago, possibly overlapping with Homo sapiens. But unfortunately, a 2019 study corrected this data. The Java fossils from a site called Nyangdong date to 117 to 108,000 years ago. Still ancient, not as recent as we thought. So what exactly happened to Homo erectus, the most successful of all the humanoids? Just kidding, that's a terrible word. Around 130,000 years ago, the climate shifted. All right, guys, it's always about the climate. The open grasslands that Homo erectus knew were replaced by tropical rainforests full of new plants and new animals, nothing they recognized, and they could not adapt. They were really sad. They're like, I wish things were back the way they used to be. You know, scary. The species that conquered Africa and Asia died on an island surrounded by a forest they didn't understand. The longest lived human species was gone because their world changed faster than they could. So we know obviously humans are out there, and there's some non-humans that have been out there for long periods of time. How about the Yunnan province in China? We found remains dated 14,000 years ago. Compared to everything else we've been talking about in this video, that's pretty recent. That's after the last ice age. And that is during the period where modern humans had already spread across the globe. Sorry, the flat. The skulls of these remains are strange. They have thick bones, flat faces, no chins, and prominent brow ridges, features that should have died out a million years earlier. A 2022 DNA analysis suggested that these were modern humans, but questions about contamination, the methodology, there's a lot of criticism in regard to these studies. If the morphology is accurate, these are the strangest looking modern humans that we have ever found isolated in China's mountains, evolving in strange conditions, potentially. Or something is out there, another species, a ghost. Ah! Maybe they're here with us now. Ah! People from Alabama. We don't know and we never will. For millions of years, other humans existed. Some looked almost like us. Some looked wrong and scary, proportions that didn't match, faces that sit differently on skulls, eyes that might have moved differently, reflected light differently, expressed things our brains could not interpret. Some hunted us, dragged us into caves, ate us, and even left our bones scattered around with their leftovers. Some we hunted, some we drove to extinction, some we out of existence, some we loved, some we cared for, some we had children with. It makes me feel human. I love it, dude. Anyways, thank you all for watching this video. Thank you to North for the collab. I really love this type of content. I've watched all of his videos, basically. I've been falling asleep to channels like his for a really long time. And that's a huge commendation, by the way. I like to learn whenever I'm going to sleep. I like Hank Green. I like Extinct Zoo. I like North O2. Hope you guys enjoyed this. If you did, press the like button down below. Join the Gump Club for some uncensored content, and I will see you in the next video.